Are you guys ready for 4.1? So we are now going to talk about Atalanta, who's one of the few female heroes that you get in Greek mythology. So we have for number one, Atalanta, one subject, only there are two verbs. She was abandoned in the woods. Wow. Her parents suck. And she was adopted by a she-bear. So we have two actions. So that means we have one subject, two actions. The one subject side is easy. Atalanta, separate your subject side from your verb side. Now, was abandoned and was adopted. If we had the word was once, we would put it here, and then we would say either abandoned and adopted. If I have the word was twice, I would have Atalanta was abandoned and was adopted. The only difference between those is literally how many times the word was exists in the sentence. So if was, Atalanta was abandoned and adopted, so there was only once, we would put it up here. If we have the word was listed twice, Atalanta was abandoned and was adopted. Well, if it's twice, then we have to have it twice. So you just have to make sure that the diagram matches the sentence as it's written. Where was she abandoned? Well, the description of the abandonment is a prepositional phrase. What's the relationship word? In. In what? In woods. The woods. What is the description of adopted? Well, by a she-bear. Kind of cool. By, it's a relationship word. She-bear. I don't know why they needed to specify a she-bear as opposed to a bear. Yeah, whatever. Cool either way. A. So that's number one. So let's take a look at number two. Now on number two, I noticed that the word and is joining two different prepositional phrases, at men and at her perfidious father, who, by the way, is the one who wanted to get rid of her. In the Greek world, children were supposed to defend their fathers, but man, a lot of times fathers were kind of jerk faces to their kids. But because what we're joining are prepositional phrases, and those are danglies, I know I can just focus on my main idea line first. So what is the action? Laughed. Do I have any words that move me into past, present, future, make it more or less likely like would or should? Nope. Who is it that's laughing? She. So that's going to be my subject and verb. Now we have at men. Is she an at men she, or is it at men laughing? Well, it's an at men laughing. So we are going to do a prepositional phrase line. You're going to see why, but I'm going to leave a little bit of room up top. And at men. And she also laughs at her perfidious father. So at father. Her perfidious, which means betraying someone's closely held beliefs. I have these two prepositional phrases that I have to join. When I am trying to join danglies, I want to try and get that dotted line close to perpendicular. Yes, I realize a math teacher would not call it perpendicular. Close enough for English. And then, of course, the conjunction that's joining them is and. Okay, number three is almost identical to number two. So we know that we have Atalanta ran as the main idea line. Of course, we have the and powerful describing Atalanta. And what do we have describing ran? Well, The first thing we have describing ran is she ran past her suitors. And of course, past is one of those relationship words. Try and fit it into the sentence, the squirrel ran blank the tree. The squirrel ran past the tree. Yep, that fits. So it's a relationship word. So we're going to have one prepositional phrase here. But she also ran toward the finish line. Again, that's describing her running. So we have two prepositional phrases that describe the finish, or that describe how she runs. Okay, so both of these prepositional phrases describe the running, but I do want to talk about this for just a second. So when you are looking at finish line, a finish line is a substantially different thing than a line. If you say you ran toward the line, I'm thinking they're like lines drawn on the road, like there's some sort of, I don't know, traffic markings. But if you say finish line, I may not even think of there being anything there at all. It's just a place that I know I have to reach to win the race. And so maybe I'm thinking of a great big overhead banner that tells me where it comes. Or maybe I'm thinking of there's a tree by the side of the road that tells me that that's where the race ends. But a finish line is substantially different than a line. So this is what's called a compound noun, meaning it takes two words, both finish and line, in order to make up one idea. So you have compound verbs as well. If you don't believe me, is there a difference between throwing and throwing up? Yeah, very different actions. So that's what a compound is. Again, I want to try and join these two prepositional phrases. Let's please get a little bit more of a 45. So if I'm trying to join these lines, I just need that dashed line to draw between them, and then I can say and. Now, number 4 is a little bit tricky because we have Meleager and Hippomenes. So we've got two subjects, but then we also seem to have two verbs. They were hunting and they had been impressed. Ooh, so I have two subjects, but I have two verbs. But if I have two subjects in the same sentence, I know I need to join them together. But if I have two verbs in the same sentence, I have to join them together. And then that leaves me a weird little line in between. Yes, it does. If you were to try and join these, just like, hey, I've got two subjects and two verbs, so let me just join them together. Yeah, that doesn't work because now you're saying there are two completely separate sentences. So we need to make sure that we bring those things together in the middle so that it's clear that what you have here is one sentence. And I can tell that because at some point it does come down to one line. And then you have two subjects, two verbs coming off it. So, Meleager and Hippomenes. Those are the two subjects. These two guys, they were hanging out together and they were hunting, past tense, and they had been impressed. They should have been impressed. Atalanta was a very impressive woman, so seriously, deserves some props. So now, how do I join them together? Well, the word and joins Meleager and Hippomenes, so I just put my and in. Does it matter whether the and goes on this side or this side? Technically, yes. Do I actually care that much? No. Were hunting and had been impressed. So again, we have an and, so I join those together. Now, by her. First of all, I need to make sure I am separating my subject side from my verb side with that great big line. If I attach by her here, I'm saying it distributes out to both halves, and so they were hunting by her. No. So by her does not modify both of them. So by her, is that describing the hunting or how they were impressed? Well, it's how they were impressed. Remember, the whole reason why we have to come down to the one line is to show that this is still one sentence. Later, you're going to see when we're joining two sentences. Okay, number 5. Atalanta was turned into a lion and was condemned to loneliness. Yeah, very few happy endings in Greek mythology. You know, Hercules kills his entire family and then is condemned to serve as his half-brother's slave. Jason turns his back on his wife and he's condemned to watch his kids be murdered in front of his face. Just not a lot of happy endings. How many subjects do we have in that sentence? 1, Atalanta. Does that Atalanta, that one subject, does it have 2 things that happen to it, or is there only one action? Well, there are 2 actions, so we know what that diagram looks like. We have 1 subject and 2 verbs, so pretty straightforward branch. Putting in the main ideas, Atalanta was turned and was condemned. Now, how are those 2 things joined? We have an and, so dashed line, and you can see that between the dashed line and what it's joining, there is an attempt to keep it perpendicular that in this case is actually perpendicular. So how are we going to describe her turning? Well, she was turned into a lion. How are we going to describe the condemnation? Well, she was condemned to loneliness. Okay? Okay, I think we have one more. Yep, we've got one more in this one. Okay, this one is a little tricky. We have Hippomenes, Atalanta, Orion, and Callisto. All of these people get screwed over and get turned into stars. So we've got 4 different subjects. Well, if I had 2 subjects, I would say, well, we have 2 subjects. So let's write our 2 subjects and join them together with a little caret. But I don't have 2 subjects. I have 4 subjects. And all of these subjects are going to be joined together. Well, if all of these subjects are joined together with my and, where does that caret have to go? Boop, boop. What are my subjects? 4 subjects all joined together. What is the one verb that joins them? Were turned. Please, for the love of all that is sacred, how do you separate the subject side from the verb side? A great big line that divides them. Don't forget that. Into stars, is that describing the subjects or is that describing the turning? Yeah, it describes the turning. It's a prepositional phrase. Into stars. And there you go. So this was a little bit tricky over here because you hadn't seen how to join lots of things together. But a lot of diagramming is just about being logical and applying the rules you know to new situations. So hopefully it wasn't too tricky. I am going to walk you through one more, and that is 4.2. And then hopefully you're going to be able to work through 4.3 on your own just using the key.